Good morning, my name's Emma Wynn and I'm a volunteer with Galena Creek Visitor Centre, and over the past few years I've been involved with the pollinator garden. I wasn't here at its inception, but I have been doing some research. So the garden is developed as a partnership between the National Forest, the county parks and Great Basin Institute. Started in 2011, the project. There was drainage soil tests done on the soil, and various volunteers then prepared the site. Irrigation was added, topsoil was added. The garden shop nursery provided the large rocks and boulders, and we've got a drainage gully and they put matting in that. We had seeds from Constop Seeds, and Washoe Nursery provided some material in containers. So it was planted in 2012, and I haven't been able to find a plan, but as you can see, we have some wonderful workhorse plants in here. We have flax, we have the cinquefoil, the slender cinquefoil Potentilla gracilis is doing really well, in fact doing so well we're going to have to thin it. Penstemon etonii were glorious. We've still got some red flowers on it. It's wonderful working in here and seeing the hummingbirds visit. The Penstemon strictus, which are the bluey purple ones, are beginning to come out. We have yarrow, we have goldenrod, which is going to be fabulous, and milkweeds. The narrow-leaf milkweed is just coming up. It flowers later in the year. The bee hotel, which is fabulous. It has materials for a variety of insects. That was put in 2015. We had a wonderful French research student who was working, I think, with AmeriCorps, and he designed it and helped build it. Sandy Rowley and Bee Habitat partnered with GBI to get the funds and to install it, and it has all sorts of materials. And in fact, we do have some leafcutter bees who've already laid eggs this year, and you can see the green where they've sealed up the eggs. They will be all in the inside of this bamboo, and this is leaves, cut up leaves. So one of the reasons why you have to accept some damage to your plants, some chewing on your plants, if you want to encourage pollinators. All sorts of fun things are coming up in the garden, I've discovered over the years. This is a shoot of showy milkweed. This needs water, and this one's been a bit more tricky to establish. We've got all sorts of young shoots, and hopefully no one's going to eat them, so that in a couple of years we should have showy milkweed in flower as well as the narrow leaf. We have some lovely shrubby plants. Shrubs are great to include in a pollinator garden because they provide shelter as well as providing interest and structure. We've left this bitterbrush. This is choke cherry. So this has lovely flowers earlier. It's going to have some cherries, but again, you can see that it provides a thicket. The roses are doing well. This is the native woods rose. I'm going to prune those now they're well enough established. I am going to start pruning them a bit to keep them bushy. We have some dogwood, which is a native plant. These will always require some irrigation because they naturally grow on riverbanks, but this plant is great for winter interest because it has the red stems, the red twigs. We've been letting this garden fill itself in. Now as it's establishing itself and getting happy, we can start thinning out so we don't end up with just half a dozen species taking over. As the sign here says, this is a pesticide-free pollinator garden. How we maintain this is we basically hand weed the things we don't want. We haven't had a problem with invertebrate pests, and I think that's because we have a nice balanced ecosystem. So as well as having the pollinators, there's many beneficial pests that will control the ones that you don't want. So we do have aphids, but we have things that eat aphids, so they remain in balance. We don't have to spray. The one thing I do use is I will use something like liquid fence or one of those other natural repellents early in the season and for very palatable plants. Don't spray it on the flowers because I don't want to put the pollinators off, but early in the season when deer are hungry and all this luscious green stuff is popping up, I will use it there. And I've used it, for example, this year, sorry Sam, on an Ipomopsis. Scarlet Gilia, we've planted it at different times and it's died out. This one popped up. It's about to come into flower, lovely scarlet trumpet flowers. but it's very palatable, the large mammals and things and bunnies and stuff like it. So I did spray that a couple of times early this year with that liquid fence, which is basically rotten eggs and garlic and stuff like that. So it's not a nasty chemical. Okay, so we have a second pollinator garden. In 2015, US Fish and Wildlife Services and the Visitor Center partnered to put in this lower garden. And yeah, there was a Connecting People with Nature grant, and we had young, youth and adult volunteers helping put in the planting material. The design on this garden was different because it's maybe to be able to give people a little bit idea of what they might be able to do in their own gardens or their backyards without going totally wild. It's slightly more manicured and set out. Unfortunately, there was a ginormous storm here in 2018 which washed out some of the steps. We've done some repair, but it still needs other repair. So the entrance to this garden is still a work in progress. So this garden, is laid out differently. It's got a nice path running through it, and you can see the plants. We've included more shrubs in here. We've got currants, and I'm particularly excited this year, having had, it's my fourth year, these mule ears, well these are arrowleaf balsam root, and then we have some clumps of mule ears. They're sending up good sized leaves and a reasonable number of leaves, so hopefully next year maybe we will get some flowering going on. Patience is definitely one of the things you need with when you put in a pollinator garden. People can think, oh, they're native plants, they're going to be fine, but actually one can, they still are fussy about sight. This garden is much shadier than the upper garden, slightly more protected by being lower, so there's a different feel, there's different little niche habitats, but it's doing fine. Predation is an issue, and we don't have a problem with insect pests, but we definitely have a problem with larger ones. There's a, Sam, I don't know if you can see, we have a fence post knocked out, and I was here on Wednesday. This one still had flowers on, that one had slightly more. So in this garden at the moment, we have a nice lot of the Penstemon strictus, mainly leaves, a lot of Etonii, which is the firecracker penstemon. That's a great one because even you can get this one at nurseries often, because buying plants is a problem here. Many of these came from the Washoe Forestry Service nursery, which is on Lake Washoe, and individuals can buy there as long as they meet certain criteria. But it really is an issue sourcing. We've also used seeds. But in this garden, we're incorporating a few garden plants, cultivated plants that don't cause environmental issues. They are great for adult pollinators. But the problem is if you want butterflies, you need to have food to feed the baby butterflies, the caterpillars, and they're notoriously fussy eaters. So for example, this lepeta, this catmint, is a great plant for adult pollinators. You get a whole variety of long-tongued bees, moths, butterflies, but it's not going to and it provides some shelter because it's dense, but it's not going to provide, no one's going to eat on its leaves. They're not going to lay eggs in there. We do have, let's see if we walk around, we've got some showy milkweed that I put in. Sarah Culper and UNR provided us with a few plants. They grow plants for pollinator gardens, and they were kind enough to give us some. So a couple of years ago we did put in some of the showy milkweed. We have a lot of the narrowleaf milkweed. We have some flax in here. They're small plants, but they're doing okay. We have done some seeding in here, a bit hit and miss. So it's, one's flowering, but there's a lot of little plants coming up. So again, patience. In a couple of years, hopefully they'll spread out to be like that great big one up in the top garden. This is one of the garden plants we've put in. Yeah, this is an Agastache species, which is hummingbird mints they're called, and these are great, and again you can find them in garden centres. If you're going to go to garden centres, choose plants that say they're neonicotide free, so that the seeds weren't given these pesticides that do affect bees and remain for a long time in the plant. And look for simpler old-fashioned flowers. So many plants are bred for us, so many varieties are bred for us. Our eye, not pollinator eyes, and they often don't have the same flower parts and are difficult for pollinators to use. So cottage garden or grandmother's plants are good ones to look for. If we come round a little bit, oh, where did it go? It was in flower, yes. So this garden is much younger. They didn't add topsoil to this, so this is the native soil. And we have got some of the buckwheats. They're still fairly small plants, but they're doing fine here. They did put, and you'll see this wherever you're walking around on the trails, we did put some in the upper garden, but I think they got too much water. I think they were killed with the imported soil and too much water. Because when you see them out on the trail, they're growing in dry, rocky places often. So they're doing well here. We do move the water around. We also have globe mallow. This is a really pretty flower. Well, that's got bent. Someone stood on that. Beautiful little flower. Again, another desert plant. So we have drip irrigation in here, and often I'll move the drips around so they don't get too much water. But as you can see, this is an attractive garden plant anyway, with its leaves, and it's silver enough and those lovely orange flowers. If you turn around, San Mahalamat. This came in, and for the time being we're leaving this because it's a nice ground cover and it flowers early in the spring. Next to it we have another garden plant. We're putting some lavenders in because those are great mid-season for those long-tongued pollinators and bees with their little trumpet flowers. We come to the end. So this garden is much shadier, but we have got a few seeds established. They are being protected by these things. We've got some lupin seeds in here that I actually did collect from around, because it's on the land owned, so I just collected these from around, and Brown's peony too have seeded, again seeds that were collected. But with seeds, again, you need to be patient. You need to put enough in for the critters that are going to eat it, and patience is a big thing. Aquilegia, columbine, they're pretty, they're beginning to go over. But we have several columbine plants here, and again, the hummingbirds love those as well as bees. They did get, that one's a nice one. They did get a bit beaten up by the frost, but say these are great for hummingbirds because the nectar is right up in the horns, so you want either hummingbirds or long-tongued bees to get up in there to get the nectar. We have got some interesting little penstemons. The game we were given from UNR. This is penstemon richardsonii, and one or two in the other ones. They're still babies, they're still being protected, but hopefully they're happy. One of the things I've learned is, as you work in a garden, you learn the sites. You learn, where you're going to put stuff. If we're going to hopefully put some more aerogonums in the garden, we're going to put them on the upper drier slopes so they don't get the water washing down in, because right plant, right place. That mantra that goes for any gardening is just the same in pollinator gardens with native plants. They're going to thrive if you give them the right conditions. You're going to work awfully hard if you want to try and establish them where, it's not so favorable. Grasses is another thing I want to try and bring in because they're great for overwintering. This is Indian rice grass. It's not super happy, but it's alive. We'll see. And I think that's Nevada's native grass. We have Andy, the park ranger, Washoe County park ranger for this district and this area, has an Eagle Scout who's just got a project approved, and they're going to come in and work on the irrigation to put some numbers in, and we'll have a key for identifying the plants, and he's also raising money for more plants. It has been wonderful, the collaborations that go into these gardens, so many groups and individuals who've worked here.